Today we're going to be talking about functions. So functions in Python. And a function is a block of code which only runs when it's called. Okay. So think of a function like an action. So let's change this color to purple. Yeah, I prefer that. So imagine this guy here, his name is called Todd. Okay, Todd. Todd is his name. So Todd can walk, okay, and Todd can run, let's just say, for these two given examples. So these are essentially actions, okay. So Todd walks and Todd can run, okay. And these are actions, and a function is essentially an action. You would put some instructions inside of this function, and then now that you've defined this function, you can use it multiple times in your code. So let's give an example here. So for example, def walk, and then print Todd walks. So how we write functions is, first of all, we will start off by typing def. Okay, so def stands for define. Okay, but we use def, and then when we use def, Python knows that we are defining a function. Then we would then specify the name of the function. So here, the name of the function is called walk. Okay, and then after that, we would have brackets. Okay, so we'd have these circular brackets right here. Okay, afterwards, we have to have that. And then we end, so at the end of the line, we have a colon. Okay, and this colon, so when you put this colon here and then you press enter, the next line automatically indents. So as you can see, there's this, all this bit will be white spaces. And this is how Python knows that this code belongs to this function. Okay, so inside of your function, you can put any instructions inside of this function here, and then once you've defined it, you can now call on this function anywhere in your code. So for example here, so now this is me calling it, and what it will do is it will run the code. So I could call this multiple times, and what this is doing is that every time I call on the name of the function with the circular brackets at the end, make sure you include this. This is how we know it's a function. It's going to come back here to where the function's been defined, and it's going to execute the code inside of that function. So me calling this 3 times is essentially going to come back here and call this function 3 times. And that's the benefit of functions. We write the code once, and then we can refer to it multiple times. Okay, so this is how we call a function, call on the name of the function with the brackets at the end. And then how we define a function, you start with def, function name, brackets, make sure to include the colon here, and then everything that you want to be inside of your function. Just remember that it needs to be indented. Okay, now that's functions in a nutshell. We also have, with our functions, we can also give our functions some information as well. So you saw here that maybe Todd walks and then Todd runs. Okay, but for example, we could give a speed. Okay, so maybe Todd is walking at maybe Todd is walking slowly, or it's a brisk walk, or he's walking fast. So we could pass that inside here. So walk, and then we can pass in the speed. Okay, same with run, we can pass in the speed. So we can give this function something. okay? And as a result, the action can be more personalized, okay? So it's always going to be different based on what you give to it. And how we can do this is, same again, you start off with def, the name of the function, but then you specify what the variable that you want to pass in, so the parameter. So we can call this parameter or arguments. Okay, and then we end with a colon, and then we can just do print Todd walks at I don't know, speed. So Todd walks at speed. Fantastic. So as you can see here, we have this function, and what we're doing is we have passed in speed. So every time that we call on this function, we need to give it a speed, and as a result, it's going to use the speed here. So now the instructions inside of your function is dependent on this parameter or argument that you've given here. And no matter what you decide to do in your function, this is how you can pass in values here. So how we would call this is, we would, again, the name of the function, brackets, but now we would pass in this value instead, because now we need to give it a value. So the number of parameters or arguments you have here must match the number you have here, okay? Because we haven't given it any default values. Now lastly, I just want to give you an example of, okay, so imagine we have, okay, we have this function and we passed in stuff, okay, we passed in speed into these functions / actions. Now what our function can do is it can also return something back to us, okay? It can also return something back. So, and the example of this is, let's go to a new page, make sure we grab a pen, def walk, and then speed. And let's just say it's gonna return the speed times 2. So whatever we give to it, it's gonna give it back to us. So imagine, just think of a function as you give something to a friend, okay? So you have your friend here. You give something to your friend, they do something, they do an action, and then they return that thing back to you. And this is essentially what this is doing. So how we would call it is walk, and then maybe we might pass in our speed, okay? Now, because it's giving us something back, remember our example with the box, okay, with the variable, okay? Now what we need to do is we need to put whatever we get back from this function into this box, okay? So whatever our friend gives us back, we have to put that in this box called a value. So that's how we would do it. Now obviously this could be called something else, but that's how we would do it, okay? Now let's go into Replit and see all these examples in action. So what we have here is we have our function. So let's just do def walk, and then we do print is walking, okay? And now what happens if you were to run this now? Nothing happens because we defined our function or our action, but we haven't called it. So now if we call it, you can see that now it will now run, and you can see it's walking. And the benefit is that we can call this multiple times. So if we were to run it again, you can see here that it says is walking, okay? So Second example, where if we wanted to pass in a parameter on argument, so you pass in speed, so okay, so now because we've done that, we have to now pass in a value. So let's just do 20 and 50. So look what happens now if we were to run it. So our function now takes in speed, and now as you can see, it says is walking at 20 pace because we passed in 20 on line 4, and the second line says is walking at 50 pace because we passed in 50. Now the final example is if we were to return. So let's just add this to our, let's do return. So we're going to return the speed times 2. Need to spell speed correctly. And then let's just remove this just to make it clearer to see. And then what we're going to do is we're going to save this to value. Okay, and then what we're going to do is, so that we can see our value, we're going to print our value. So as we can see here, if we were to run this now, you will see the value multiplied by 2. So 20 times 2 is 40. Thanks for watching.